Brilliant, thank you. And apologies for the kind of lack of commercial break between the two talks. The last lot overran massively, which probably says you something about how tutors can talk, given half a chance. What we're going to be talking about today for this final session of the show, actually I'm going to just be quiet while the PA makes its very loud announcement about our talk. Has it finished? Yeah. Is how to spot a great school, which is really quite a complicated topic. And we've got a fantastic panel to try and address that topic. Grace Moody-Stuart is Director of the Good Schools Guide and advises professionally on this topic. Samantha, is head of Cranleigh School and has, which is a very great school, but also will have advised and helped loads of parents make choices about choosing that school and or other schools. And Olga, as a parent with how many children? I can't remember.
4 children.
4 children who've all gone very different routes. So I'm going to start by asking a few general questions of our panel, just to get a sense of their own personal education routes and or their children's. And I'll put my hand up as well on this one. So let's start. Who themselves went to an independent school on the panel?
I went to an independent school.
Okay, hands up. No.
Sorry,
right.
sorry.
Let's ask the audience who went to an independent school as a child. Okay, so roughly a third, maybe something like that. Okay, whose children went to independent schools?
A mixture.
Okay, a mixture. Mine didn't. Who went to single-sex schools as children on the panel? Okay, 3 to 1. Who in the audience went to a single-sex school? Okay, great. Who boarded on the panel? Okay, 50%. Who boarded in the audience? And who went to a British curriculum school? Audience? Great. Okay, so I think we've got a basic idea there of where we're all coming from, which is pretty much all over the place. And that is quite an important thing in terms of thinking about what does or doesn't make a great school, because schools are very different, education systems are very different. So we're going to roam really quickly and widely around how you do this. I'm going to start with Sam. I presume that parents who visit Cranleigh are looking at multiple schools, aren't they? They're not just coming to you.
No, I think all parents tend to look at a number of schools, and I would certainly suggest that they do that. We have a prep school as well, and a good percentage of our parents will opt for the senior school, obviously coming on to us too. For parents who live in London and sending their children to London schools, though, they're probably going to be looking at any number of senior schools. And my recommendation is always to look at about 5. I wouldn't go trawling round 10 to 15 schools, and I would then really recommend that you then sort of narrow that down to 3 schools that you like. And I wouldn't make them all the same either. You might be looking at a single-sex school, you might be looking at a co-ed school, boarding all day, and if you're not quite sure, then have a look at one of each. By that stage, you have a really strong idea about what's going to really resonate with you as well. And don't take your children to visit more than 3, because otherwise they just all merge into one.
That's incredibly helpful advice. That in the kind of school search kind of world, we talk about a short list, a long list and a short list. And 5, I think, is the kind of number that lots of people use for the short list. Yeah. You might well start with a long list. It's much, much wider than that before you kind of focus it right down.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Do you find, you've talked a bit about not comparing like with like and getting some variety into that 5, but you probably should do a bit of, apples and apples as well as apples and oranges, shouldn't you?
So I think once you've decided whether or not you want a boarding school, either full boarding or weekly boarding or day, then I would do like for like at that point. And then it's down to really thinking about what's the culture of the school that really resonates with you, the school whose values, and I would really look at values, and I would talk to the staff and the students about the values of the school, because if they resonate with you and your family, then you will find that your child is very likely to be happy in that school. I wouldn't be driven by league tables, and I wouldn't be driven by facilities, because actually what they don't do is they don't show you what the culture of the school is. And a good school will have a very strong culture, and that culture will enable your child to thrive.
It's interesting that you're using the word values. It used to be ethos, but I always wondered how on earth you spot this thing. I mean, like it's a very easy thing to kind of encapsulate if you're in it, but as an outsider coming in, how do you spot values?
Well, so for example, if a school talks about sort of community and kindness, I think as you go round a school and you meet the students and you meet the staff, you get a very strong sense of whether that actually is a lived experience for the children at the school. Yes, go and see the open mornings when you're going to get an awful lot of parents there, and you'll see the school very much on show. But you need to see a school on at least 3 or 4 occasions to get that real sense of what it's like. And you will meet different pupils, and you will meet different staff, and you'll go into different boarding houses. And in doing that, you will get a strong sense of whether what the school is saying it stands for actually does, because you will see that through the different students and the staff that you meet.
Yeah, if you're lucky, you get a school tour led by one of the students.
Always.
Yeah, and you can then ask them all sorts of cheeky questions that kind of like tell you a few things about their values. I'm always really interested also in who schools celebrate, and that tells you quite a lot about their values, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think if the head stands up at the open morning and just reels off the Oxbridge outcomes and the top Russell Group universities, does that actually illustrate a really, really strong school? If you're a highly selective school, then you take it for granted that those are going to be the destinations that the students are going to be going to. But actually, if the head is standing up and talking about what it is that they stand for as a school, what are the children, what is the journey that each individual child is going to go on? How are they going to develop whilst they're at the school? How is the school going to cater for different types of children? What's the value that the school is bringing to the children at the school as well? That is what shows you what makes a great school. You need to celebrate a child standing on the stage and talking for the first time. That's what really matters. Or playing in a concert for the first time, or being out, maybe it's representing the third team for rugby or for hockey. Because that is what builds a child's confidence. And if a child develops their confidence as they're going through their teenage years, academically, they will do well. When you lose your confidence, that's when children retreat into themselves, and that's when you start to see other things unravel.
What do you think are like really penetrating good questions that parents have asked you?
I think one question which I've always really valued a parent asking is, particularly from a head's point of view, is how do I know as a head what's going on in my school? Recognising that as a head, you can't be everywhere all of the time. And I think a lot of that is about interaction, obviously, that you have with the pupils, but also what the structures are and the reporting structures are in the school to make sure that no child is going unaddressed and unseen. So I find that very valuable. When a parent asks me about what the value added is at the school, I'm always hugely impressed by that. And that is something I would encourage everybody to do, because all of our children go through these baseline tests. And these baseline tests at different ages give you an indication of academic outcomes at GCSE and then again at A-level. And if you've got a positive value added from the school, that illustrates for you that that school is teaching very well indeed, because it means that the children are getting above what the standardised test is suggesting that they should be. So if you've got a child going to a very highly selective London school and they are predicted to get 9s at GCSE and the school achieves 9s, great, well done to the school, that's really good. But if you've got a child that is predicted to be getting 7s at GCSE and they come out with 9s, that's +2 value added. That shows the quality of the school. And to my mind, that's what we as parents should be looking for on the academics. I think on the other side, it's also to ask about the pastoral journey and really getting an understanding of what the pastoral systems are within the school and how the pastoral, the house mistresses or house masters and the tutors and the safeguarding team, how do they all work together in order to make sure that your child is A, safe, but B, that your child is thriving as well?
And then I'm going to ask a very quick answer for this one.
Sure.
But obviously there are children that Cranleigh doesn't suit, and sometimes they come and then it doesn't work and they have to go. As from a school point of view, can you kind of see that car crash happening, or does it take you by surprise?
Well, I've been at Cranleigh for 6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
So no child, in my experience at Cranleigh, has left the school. But obviously I've been a head for 14 years, so I've got an awful lot of experience with the headship. Sometimes a school doesn't work out for a child, and that can be for a whole range of reasons. And I think it's when you are in that situation, it's about sitting down with the head or with a member of the senior team and trying to identify why things might not be working out and whether it might be a better environment for them to move into. Sometimes, for example, boarding doesn't work out for somebody, but maybe going to a flexi boarding school might be better for them. Or equally, they may find that going into a very big school, when they've been in quite a small prep school, they suddenly find that transition very hard, and perhaps going into a slightly smaller school where they might feel more known could be better for them as well.
Thank you very much, Sam. We'll come back to you in a second. So, Olga, let's turn to you. Do you want to give us a brief summary of kind of like your children's different routes?
Well, we've got 4 children. They've all gone to different independent secondary schools. A lot of them are very musical, and we've really chosen very bespoke schooling for each child, slightly accidentally, just because we live in London and therefore schools are very selective. And I think interestingly, we've taken our girls have gone for 6th form from top academic London day schools to boarding schools. And one of them, I phoned them actually and I asked, what would you say if you came here? What advice would you give? And my second child, she's just started at Oxford, and she said, Mum, what I got when I left my top academic school and went to boarding school was I got this one-to-one attention. I got bespoke education. I got so much time, extra time given to me, and I wasn't that in London. So I think we went unconventionally, we broke a route, and we went for exactly what you were saying of that time. It's as good as the people you're surrounded by. You can have all the statistics, all the glossy PR brochures, put that aside and just look at time, the people who give you time.
So, I mean, obviously you can do that, but you have all that to hand. So you have got to deal with all that information, the ISI reports, the A-level results, the Sunday Times league tables, the glossy brochures, I mean, just on a practical level, did you look at all that? You can't possibly have ignored it.
It wasn't my first thing, no. Maybe I'm quite unconventional. You go round, get a feel, meet the head of department. If your child's very musical, meet the head of music. If you don't like them or you get the wrong feel, why would you send them there just for the academics? If you have a very bright child, they're going to thrive wherever you go. It's the people, it's the culture, it's the ethos.
What about friends and their advice? Did you talk to friends?
Oh, well, the white noise of the playground and other people, having a trophy school, there's all that. I think you have to try and put that aside. Think about the culture of your family, what you want. And the other thing with 4 children is logistics. You can't get to the other side of London to watch sports matches very easily. So why are you choosing a school an hour and 15 minutes away just for the academics? Schools are communities. You want local friends. Think very carefully about your logistics, going to concerts, going to sports matches, parents' evenings, school fairs.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question haven't dug into yet, but yours go to different schools, don't they? Or do they all go to the same? No?
They went to the same prep school when they were younger, but every school that we chose, I did put a pin in the map and think, how am I going to get to this school? schools. So the M4 corridor was very good for us. We're in West London. The M4 is easy. The M3 isn't. You know, the M40 isn't. You have to think very carefully. And in London, can your girl walk home at 5 o'clock in the evening on their own? Is there a school bus? All those things. Have you got a nice walk to the tube station or the bus? And sometimes I think you get lost in thinking of the academics, the facilities, and it comes down to when things go wrong, it's because they're frightened to walk to the tube station in the dark.
Yeah, all those really pragmatic things are incredibly important, aren't they? There is a theory that you shouldn't choose a boarding school that's more than a 45, 50-minute drive away from home. Certainly below the age of sort of 15. Would you buy that?
Yes, I think we actually sent one of our children to slightly over that. But again, it's on the M4 and I know that road works, but I would agree with that, yes.
Because bear in mind, you will want to go, I mean, you pack them off to boarding school, but you will want to go there and you will want to watch matches and plays and attend things far more than you probably expect. Just like you would if they were at a local school. And that's something that I think people often don't really take into account, do they? Okay, well that's a brilliant start to the conversation. We're going to come back to you as well as to Sam. Grace, you do this professionally. Did that help when choosing schools for your own children?
I, like Olga, have 4 children, and it did not help, I have to confess. And in fact, if I look back, I wish I'd had someone like one of my colleagues to go and talk to about the overwhelming sense of where do you begin. And Olga mentioned that she just visited and so on. I think you can't avoid all the the data, the academic outcomes, the value added, the reviews, the ISI report, all of that, and it is overwhelming because there is so much to consider. But at the end of the day, I think, I can't remember what the question was now, but I think it's it actually comes down, as Olga said, to the visits, to the actual meeting of the individuals in the school. As Sam said, when you talk to the pupils and you talk to the teachers, you really get a sense of what the values are. That's where you find the values. And although you have to look at all that data and information, ultimately it's the visits and it's talking to professional people who understand the landscape that really help to clear your kind of head and to see what the right decisions are.
Next question. I sort of feel I know the answer because Grace is the daughter of some very well regarded head teachers. But no offence to Sam if you disagree with this, but how important do you think the head teacher is?
Not at all.
I wish I could say it wasn't important, but even this evening we've been talking to various parents who've come to see us at the Good Schools Guide stand and to our colleagues, we've been discussing it. The head is absolutely essential. It's whether it be at senior school or junior school. At junior school it's essential because that's when they're literally sharing the responsibility for bringing up your child, especially in a boarding environment. But at senior school, because it all filters down from the head, and ultimately, however many delegated positions there might be in a school, it will be the head who makes those important decisions. And you need to know that when things go wrong, and hopefully they won't, but that's the acid test of whether that head is the right head for you. And of course, and a number of people have said to us this evening, but you're investing all of this into a head who then might leave. Now, of course, that's true, and that's a gamble you have to take, and that's one of the considerations. How long has the head been there? Are they likely to leave? Could there be a transitional period and so on? But the head is absolutely crucial to a head, and Sam's been very modest, but she is one of the most outstanding heads of her generation.
And on this thing about values, really what that means is the head, to be really frank about it, because there is, otherwise it's a building. But like in terms of like the what actually happens when things go wrong, or who gets values, what gets praised, where the tension is in the institution, it all comes from the head, doesn't it? It's absolutely crucial. You can, some very big schools have pretty strong top level structure that spreads it round, but you do need a strong leader, I think, in the same way as the country or any other organisation. Final question before we kind of throw it, get more general. there is a huge amount of information, including the Good Schools Guide, which is a very useful source of information. If you don't know it, you should probably have a look at it.
Come and talk to us.
And read it and subscribe and all that. But what do you do to actually boil all that information down? I mean, how do you turn like a huge array of different sources into a final decision?
Well, I think there are various different strands. So obviously you've got the data and you've got to look at that. But like Sam, I would not place too much emphasis on league tables. Very selective schools are bound to have good results, and less selective schools will have broader range of academic ability, but that doesn't mean to say that your very academic child wouldn't thrive there. So have a look at the results, but don't place too much emphasis on that. In terms of boiling down, I think I've already said it. It's really about when you visit a school, what you feel as a result of having been there. And it is very instinctive. It's much more instinctive than it is cerebral, I think. And the rational side, you can have it all there as all these spreadsheets and everything else, but ultimately it will be a gut feeling. And I think you've also got to keep an open mind, perhaps, about boarding day, co-ed, single sex. I think ultimately you just want to find a really good school, and although some parents wouldn't even contemplate boarding, and obviously the fees are high, if it is something that actually you think your child would really thrive in, then don't exclude it, because ultimately what you want is a really good school for your particular child, and all those sort of elements of distinction are in a way not relevant. It's what the quality of that particular environment is like for your particular individual child.
Great. So we're going to kind of like have a more freewheeling discussion now where anyone in the panel could jump in, but I'm going to direct the first one just at Sam to start off, because I think it kind of is relevant for you. We hear a lot about sort of talented children and how to choose schools for talented children, and how to find ones for really academic ones that will push them and enable them to do brilliantly. But what about children who are not especially talented? I've got two children who both completely off the scale in terms of their lack of academic ability. How do you choose schools for children like that?
So I think I'm a very firm believer that no child is a finished article when they're applying to senior school. And I think it's about looking at their potential. It goes back to confidence again as well. So you are looking for a school, I think, which is that really focuses on breadth and building opportunity to be able to develop talent outside the classroom, actually as much as inside the classroom. I think it's really important that with any school that you choose, that you've got a range of academic abilities, actually, because I think if your child is not showing themselves to be particularly academic at prep school, it doesn't mean to say that actually as the penny begins to drop and they go through the teenage years and they become inspired, because so much is about inspiration as well as that self-belief, that actually you're not going to suddenly start to see them begin to thrive as they get to sort of 15, 16 and into their A-levels. And they need to have academic children around them as well, because actually if you've got that motivation around you too, and you've got that breadth, that actually shows you also what you can aspire to. What you don't want to do is find that they're in a stifling environment where actually they're always going to feel bottom of the pack. And I think that that's where you as a parent have got to make very, very honest decisions and know your child, and don't try and shoehorn them into a school because you think the name of the school is going to be what's going to set them forward for the future, because actually it isn't going to be that at all. It's that culture.
I was actually thinking a kind of altogether different level of ability. Grace knows what I'm talking about. There are some schools here for children who wouldn't suit A-levels, aren't there?
Yes. I think I agree with Sam. The unfinished article is very much. I mean, what we always say to parents is education is a long game, and it feels very short when we're nearly the other side, like Olga and me. But it actually is a long game, and there can be many twists and turns along the way. And I think what you're constantly doing is having a sense of a sort of a very sketchily marked plan, which you can very quickly respond and deviate from if necessary, because there'll be lumps along the way. There'll be a sense that actually that child is never going to be an academic, but oh my gosh, look at how creative and how imaginative they are. There is another way of tapping into that potential. It doesn't have to be an academic route that they're taking, and there are lots of different options.
And I think, if I can chip in again, look at schools and their curriculum as well, because actually schools which have got a very traditional curriculum and also their co-curricular opportunities, they may just cater for that sort of traditional academic child. But actually, where you see a school which is beginning to focus on enterprise and technology and entrepreneurship, then actually you're beginning to see that they're developing skills which your child can then take into their workplace, and they're probably going to be massively successful. You don't have to be an academic, as we know, to be an incredibly successful professional in the future.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What about, boarding, we've talked about, it may not suit everybody. It didn't suit one of your children, did it?
Yes, we had a child who went to boarding school, and it failed pretty quickly within the first few weeks. It wouldn't settle at all. And actually we phoned our old prep school headmaster. He was fantastic. And he helped us transfer to a London day school to reverse our decision. I think if you're going to fail fast was an expression we were told. And we had a very quick changeover, and he's very, very happy there. And I think you have to really, if you go boarding and your child has never boarded, always have a plan B, have a reserve, just think about it, because you can't really predict if they will like boarding.
Open days or one-to-one visits?
One-to-one. And open, but the one-to-one is where you really learn.
And from a school's point of view, if you do a one-to-one visit, how much are you judging the parents as well as the child?
Oh, always.
Yep.
Very, very important. And I think it's really important to, in those individual meetings, is to work with the parents to identify actually what is going to be the right fit for their child. At the end of the day, we're parents. We know the investment. Yes, it's financial because you're looking at schools within the sector, but it's a huge emotional investment, and you want to get it right. And it's really irresponsible, I think, of the school not to work with you to try to make sure it is. So I think from school's point of view, it's not about us trying to paint ourselves as being something that we're not. I think is important. But if as a head you can sense that actually probably we're not going to be the right fit, then that's worth having that conversation sort of earlier on in the process as well.
One of the values of an event like this is that you can go and talk to schools and they probably won't remember who you are. So you've got a chance to kind of ask the sort of questions you probably wouldn't want to ask on a one-to-one tour, where they kind of would try to suss out whether you're their kind of parent or not. That's also a slightly less extent of a sort of value of open days, but it depends on the school. I mean, some of the London schools won't do one-to-one visits, and they have huge open days with like 200 parents sat there. And while that can be problematic, there are certain advantages to anonymity as well, because you can get, if the head gives a talk, for example, you'll get quite a good sense of what the head's like. If they ask children to talk, that can be very revealing as well. Some schools are very open with this kind of thing, and others, the head's more guarded, and that you'll get a sense of whether you like them and from that sort of thing. Do you feel like you've made? Do you have children? First of all, three.
I do. I've got a daughter and a son.
Yeah, and did your experiences as a head inform how you chose schools for them?
Yes, 100%, and also I guess my own school experiences as well. So neither of my children are at the sort of the top academic end, and I was very keen to ensure that I found the right school for both of them. Now, I was at that point with my daughter. I was head of a single-sex girls' school, but I was very sort of insistent, and so was my husband, that we still looked at a range of schools so that we got the right school for her, and she was very keen to come to my school. My son obviously wasn't able to come to my school at that point, so he's at a school in Oxford. I gave him the option to be able to move for sixth form, obviously, which would be much easier for me now being in a co-ed environment. And he said, I'm not having you as my head. Thank you very much. I need my own space. And that's absolutely fine as well. And but having his input now from afar is also incredibly useful.
So that was a question I was going to ask. Actually, I could probably start with Olga, but we can go around on this one. How much do you listen to your children when choosing a school?
Well,
and at what age?
I think at the age of 10, I call it the Kit Kat phenomena. You get them in the car and you think, how was the school? And they talk about how they've had these delicious chocolate biscuits, and that's the school for me. And so you have to be very careful at the age of 10, I think. And then I think as they get older, you can listen more, and they've got more of their own unique interests, and they're far more able to look at a school. So by the time our children were in sixth form and two of them wanted to change, I was really listening to them. In fact, I was quite anxious, and I phoned Grace to say, what are we doing? So I think I really listened to them, and it was a success. But I think be very careful when they're young, because they really do, think about the biscuits they were given.
I think I'd add one more thing to not listening to listen to your 10-year-old, but not taking their views into account too heavily, which is that I think it's an enormous pressure to put on a child to have them to make the decision, such a momentous decision. And in fact, funnily enough, I was advising a family recently, and this very sophisticated 10-year-old was moving to a prep school in Cambridge. And I talked to him because his parents wanted me to talk to him about what he thought and everything. And I said to him, look, don't worry, this is not on you. This is your parents' decision. You're just helping with the information. And his face visibly relaxed. And I think too many parents, because they so want to get the right thing and they want to make sure that the child is happy, put undue pressure on them to make that huge decision. So that would be another reason not to take too much account of what your 10-year-old is saying.
The complicated thing can be if there are definite pathways that not just your child but a whole bunch of children are all doing. So if you're at a primary school and there's one or two senior schools that most of them go on to, or you're in a prep school in the city and a chunk go to St Paul's and a chunk go here and a chunk go there, and they're all assuming they'll do the same as their friends, that can be inculcated quite early on, and it's hard not to listen to that because the desire to stay with your friends is really strong, I think.
I always say that's the worst reason for choosing a school.
And you hold with that?
Sometimes they listen.
I don't think that is a bad reason. I think friendship groups are really important.
No, but you make new friends. When you're young, you make new friends. And if you cling on to the old friends, in fact, you go to the same school together and suddenly you're not friends anymore. And that was the whole reason you went, and you're stuck with it.
Do we all concur with that?
Yes, it's like when you're advising GCSE students about choosing their A-level options, and they want to do geography A-level because they love their geography teacher at GCSE. Well, you don't choose a subject on whether you love your teacher at GCSE, because you can't guarantee having that teacher at A-level as well. So you've got to go for what is in that analogy, the right subject, in the same way as what is the right school.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with this. I'm going to be really honest about this.
What do you think? Because actually we've given our opinion on this. Where do you sit in it?
Well, I think one of the difficult things for GCSEs to A-levels is that they seem to change their mind every day. So you can be having a debate about geography because I love the geography teacher, and the next day you're having it about history or philosophy. I mean, it just is a movable feast.
I think a lot depends on where you live and what your friendship groups are like, to be honest. Because I've just literally had a party with my son, who's 18, and a whole bunch of his closest friends from primary school came back from university, and alongside a whole bunch of other people. They've all been together all the way through. They've maybe done different bits at different ages, but it's really powerful that if you've got that local thing around you, it is a really great thing.
But the primary school friends can come back together when they're 18, even though they haven't been to the same secondary school.
True, very true.
I think one of the other things is in the initial stages of London schooling, particularly in very academics, is you're not choosing them, they're choosing you. So you haven't got a choice at the beginning. So talking about friendships and it'd be nice to go together, be very, very careful You have to like every school that you go around, be very neutral because they are choosing you. It's very different out of London.
Yeah, we probably ought to. We could, if people want us to carry on that topic, we could do a couple of minutes on the difference between London and out of London. Would that be useful as a final thing? Yeah, there's a bit of nodding. We've all been parents in London schools. Let's dish the dirt on it. I mean, the being chosen thing is quite weird, isn't it?
Yes, you think you have a choice. You have your child's CAT scores, they fit into a lovely category or they don't, whatever. But actually, you have very little choice until you have a place, and then comes the choice. And I think the minute you go beyond the M25 and a bit broader, suddenly you're part of the process. You have more choice. And I think, as you were saying, and Grace was saying, just because you have a very academic child, they don't have to go to a very academic school. You just have to go to a school where they can be academic. And that's what a good school will do. And then everything else is such a great add-on. The time, that's what my daughter remembers the most, is the bespokeness and the one-to-one attention that she got.
I think the thing about London is that it's just intensely academic. I mean, most independent schools in London, are even the ones that have started out saying we're going to be the answer to the academic landscape, end up being highly selective because there are high numbers applying. So I think as soon as you leave London, that kind of academic focus is taken away, and it doesn't stop those schools from being academically successful, but it's just not the primary focus pressure point. And I think the pressure of the 11 plus and London day schools is phenomenal, and it's driven by the parents as much as anything else.
And it's not just in the private system either, because effectively London has grammar schools in the sixth form across London. They're all highly selective, the top ones. So any school you've heard of that gets great A-level results in London is in some way incredibly selective. So if like me, you've got a child who's not particularly academic, you're navigating quite a strong sense of failure.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that really worries me. A friend of mine actually is looking at going through the whole 11 plus with her daughter at the moment. One of the things that really worries me is you've got a child with a CAT score of 120, 125 who may not get into some of your your top London schools. They come away aged 10 thinking that they're a failure. A CAT score of 120 is extremely good. And I think that they get a very distorted view at a very young age about what their potential trajectory is going to look like, and that causes potentially so many problems for the future. I think the other thing to try to look at is do students who go to these very academic schools in London, do they end up in terms of their life professional success doing better than students who are at a less selective school with a broader curriculum in the future? And I'll put absolute money on it that they don't, because as they all go onto university and then into their adult lives, it all pans out. So I think we get very, very anxious at 11 about getting our child into the right academic school. That isn't going to inform their future.
Yeah, ask St Paul's how many writers they've got on their alumni. It's hardly any. They all do unbelievably boring things later on. So yeah, it's not straightforward what happens in life, and it's not a race either, which is, I think you can feel like it is as a London parent. So I'd like to thank our panel enormously. We are actually very close to closing time. But if you want to call on them for a few minutes afterwards, I'm sure they're happy to answer questions. Thank you all.